Rev up your engines! You know, I'm not a big fan of General Motor products today. What about the past? Well, here's the 2000 Denali. The guy bought 5 years ago for about $2,300. Not bad, right? He bought it with about 190,000 miles, all right? A lot of mileage. Now he's got 263. So he's been driving it all those years. He's had it for 5 years. Let's see if he had to put big money in it. So let's look under the hood. Well, what you want to see, it's a V8 engine. It's a 5.7. They're very well made engines. It's got the 4L60E transmission. It and the engine are still original. They used to make them really good. Now, if this was 2009 or even worse, a 2019, you won't get that kind of lifespan out of those things. It barely burns any oil. Now, the AC compressor's locked up. It doesn't work. But he's a man who takes his time, so he's going to get around to it soon to put a new compressor on. It's typical. They will go out. But he's been driving it 5 years without it, so obviously it doesn't affect the running of the vehicle one iota. It just makes him sweat. Since he lives in the Orange Grove State, Florida, just keep saying to yourself, sweating is good for my body. It gets rid of all the impurities. You're going to buy a big vehicle like a Denali. Forget gas mileage. He gets about 13 in city, and maybe 14 and a half on a highway. They're big, heavy vehicles with V8 engines. You're gonna get lower gas mileage, but it's still running perfectly fine. Go out and buy yourself a new $60,000 truck that gets better gas mileage. Well, let's see. He paid less than $3 for this. You can buy an awful lot of gasoline for that kind of money. He got it cheap. The hood kind of gives that away, but that kind of gives it a little of old school flair. That's not even the original hood. It was cracked, so he put this on. But I don't know, I'd probably turn it into a rat truck. It would look cool that way. The rest of it's a little too shiny, so I'd probably scuff all that up, maybe put some acid wash on it, and then clear coat it to have a nice rat truck. If you look inside, sure, the leather's all worn out, but hey, it's an old Denali. It once was a luxury truck. Let's see what it sounds like. Listen to that V8 engine. Let's just say they don't make them like they used to. Still good cruising truck. When he takes it on the road, fill it up about every 250 miles. Now listen to the engine. Like I said, they don't make them like they used to. Strong engines. They can go a long time. Found one of these for $2,300. My advice is snap it up if you want a big old giant SUV. It may be old, but it's still got all the room inside. That hasn't changed. Look at all that space. Look at all the junk you got in it. And of course, it's got the nice back doors, so you can get inside easily. So let's take it for a spin. Now you can see the 2-wheel, auto 4-wheel, 4 high, 4 low. All that still works. We'll just leave it in 2 high though. It's an old truck. Let's see what's left of it. Well, it gets up and goes. Listen to that tranny. Tranny shifts like a dream still. All that mileage. It's the original tranny. Back in the day, GMC was making pretty good trucks. Now look at this thing idling. Nothing is shaking, as old as it is. Yeah, the dash is cracked. But here we go. It goes. Now he's got a temperature gauge, look at it. It's running perfectly. It's not running like a modern car hotter. Now look what happens when I take my foot off the gas. Now it makes no noise at all. That's how smooth this engine is. So listen to this baby idle. For $2,300, now 5 years later, the guy obviously got his money's worth. Yes, indeed, looks can be deceiving. May look like a junker, but it sure as heck doesn't run like one. So let's see. Somebody once paid $44,000 for this truck, and he paid $2,300. I wonder who got the better deal out of that one. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Jimmy Vera, so Scotty, do you need to bounce all 4 wheels or just the 2 front ones? Thank you. Back in the day when I was a young mechanic in the 1960s, we only balanced the front tires most of the time because this makes the steering wheel shake. Now, if you got cheap tires, you probably have to balance them all because some cheap tires are so out of round. Most cars these days are front wheel drive, and the rear tires just roll down the road like the back wheels of a wagon. As long as they're close enough, you probably won't feel any difference. But if you're buying really cheap tires, they may be really out of round, then you'll have to balance them. But say you get the front ones bouncing, not the back, and it goes down the road straight, and the steering wheel doesn't shake, and the body doesn't shake, what the heck, leave them alone. We never used to back in the 60s. We only did the front ones because people didn't have much money in those days. People were making, $1.15 an hour, so they didn't want to spend money, and they didn't bother. They worked fine. Great one, Chappelle says, I know you're a mechanic, not an engine rebuilder, but what do you think there's a big difference between coated pistons and bare pistons? Well, they coat them, a lot of them, the Germans for ages coated them. But the main thing depends on how is the piston made. If you have a forged piston, a lot stronger than a cast piston. You got a steel piston, a lot stronger than an aluminum piston, but it weighs more. So there's pluses and minuses any way you care to go. The main reason that a lot of the pistons, they coated them because they could make them cheaper and put a coating so they try to last longer. And you're not going to find too many mass-produced cars that have forged pistons. That's for the race boys because it costs too much money to make forged pistons. They're not going to make forged pistons. A lot of it's to do with money, economy, and, what do you want to get? And as usual, you get what you pay for. Justin Shepard said, should I change the transmission fluid anyway? My girlfriend has a 2017 EcoBoost. She's going to be over 70,000 miles. She should get it changed, I think. And the dealer said they only change it every 150. What should you do? Definitely change it. On the other hand, I would have never bought an EcoBoost Mustang. I did not like those little four-cylinder engines. They wear out. I've never seen one go 100,000 miles without either the engine or the fancy EcoBoost fuel injection GDI system go bad or the transmission go bad. So yes, I would change the fluid and filter now if I were you. I would also keep a close eye on it before anything starts going bad, because with all of my customers that own those little bitty four-cylinder Mustangs, the EcoBoost system tends to break down if you drive hard. Now maybe your girlfriend drives slow, or she does, maybe it'll last, but most guys I know buy those four-cylinder EcoBoost Mustangs. They got something like 345 horsepower. They use the horsepower and they do wear out before they get 100,000 miles on. Brian says, my left tail light on the license plate on my 01 Accord doesn't work, even with a new bulb. What should I try next? Okay, you said the left. So I'm assuming your right one works, right? Well, it's the same system that feeds both. On the right one, splice the wire power. Get a little piece of wire and splice it onto the one on the left one. Then the same power will operate in both. Simple fix. You got a short somewhere, but rather than spend days trying to trace the short down, splice it onto the power on that side, then cut the power wire on the other side, in case it's a short back, which would burn the other bulb out. Splice it onto that naked wire. Voila, it's fixed. Since they work on the same circuit, easy fix. Just like headlights. You got one headlight works and one that doesn't. Rather than search through the whole car, hey, if the wiring works on one side, just wire it to the other side so they work off the same thing. It's an easy, cheap way to fix them. Just make sure that when you do it, the one that doesn't work, cut the power wire there so you're not feeding through the system. And then it goes directly to that bulb, and if there's a problem back in the system, it won't bother anything. If it's got a short down the line, won't matter because you disconnected that part of the old wire anyway. The U.S. said Jeff Bezos and Sir Richard Branson are not really astronauts, even though they're claiming they're astronauts. To be an astronaut, they got to go up so high. They did go high enough. There's more than just going up high. They went over 50 miles up, so that says they can be an astronaut. But they also have to do duties that are essential to public safety or contributed to human spaceflight safety. And they say they didn't. Now, both of them had custom-made pins saying they were astronauts, but they weren't NASA-approved ones. They basically were just riding. So these things are just, they go up and they go down, right? Automatically. They got engineers and computers running the things. They're not having anything to do with running the stuff. They're just passengers. I have to agree with NASA. Okay, we all ride in airplanes when we fly somewhere in commercial airplanes, right? Are we pilots? Of course we're not. We're just sitting in a seat riding around. So we're not pilots, just like they really aren't astronauts. It's true, they're just riding along. They could be outer space passengers, but they can't call themselves astronauts because they're just sitting there going up and down. I think it's hilarious myself. But if they want, they have a new order at NASA, and it allows honorary awards to be given based on merit. So they'll probably give them honorable awards. But they're not real astronauts, just like I'm not a real pilot. I ride around in planes. I don't fly them. I'm just sitting there, right? Like most people. Philip Macy says, hey, Scotty, barbecue ribs, buffalo chicken wings, or crab cakes? Now, I've had crab cakes in Maryland, and they were excellent. And I've had buffalo chicken wings in Buffalo and Niagara Falls, and they were insane. They invented it in Buffalo, and there's a little restaurant in Niagara Falls, 3rd Street Wine Bar, and there is a gourmet chef there, and he makes gourmet wings that were the best I ever had. And barbecued ribs, same thing. I've had barbecue ribs that were killer. But they were done in the north side of Houston in an old house where a guy had his own barbecue running out of his own house. And they were excellent. It all depends who makes them and how good of a job they did. They're all tasty if they're done right. And conversely, they're all crap if they're made by people who over-fry them or don't cook them right or use big chicken legs. They're supposed to be wings. That's what they call chicken wings. They're not chicken legs. They're chicken wings. So they have to be wings to be the correct flavor and size and everything. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.